Hey guys, it's Saria. Welcome back to my channel. So today's video is a tutorial and it is going to be how I made this like hollowed out pumpkin inspired by the home of the Sanderson sisters. So I did end up picking up a couple more of these little doll houses and I thought that it would be really cute to turn one of them into the home of the Sanderson sisters just with a little bit of paint. Obviously it's not going to be an exact replica, but it's close enough. I do have two ways of displaying this. One is inside of a hollowed out craft pumpkin and then one is actually like on a base so that you can put it somewhere else in your home, maybe in a tiered tray or something like that. But without any more chit chat, let's jump into this tutorial.
So the first thing you're going to need is one of these little doll houses. These are from the toy section and there are two different versions of them. I personally prefer the white house for this particular project, but there is also a pink house. After getting it out of its package, then I'm just going to start removing all of the windows and doors. And don't throw the package away just yet because we are going to be using the little figures that are inside of the house. And if you want to do it exactly how I did, you will need a second house because it only comes with 2 figures and you're going to need 3. But to start off, I'm just going to be painting the house. I find that chalk paint works best. I did another craft video where I showed a bunch of different Dollar Tree crafts that you could do, and I painted these houses with spray paint, and I found that the spray paint just didn't stick quite as well. So the roof itself, I'm just going to paint brown, and then the house, originally I started by just painting it distressed. So I thought it would look correct, I guess, to look like the Sanderson sisters' house if I left a white undertone. I do end up repainting this house a few times with different layers of paint just because I wasn't super happy with how it was coming out until the end. So I started with a brown dry brushing method, and if you don't know what dry brushing is, it's just where you dip your brush into the paint, wipe off most of the excess, and then you're just kind of scraping it across whatever you're painting to give it a really distressed look. For all of the windows and doors, I'm going to be painting these brown as well, so just using that same brown chalk paint. I believe it's called Chocolate Truffle is the official name of this paint. And I'm just going to be using the same brush to paint all of this stuff brown. Once the roof dried, I went in with another chalk paint called Moss. I did want to show you guys the inside of the roof because you do need to paint a little bit of the inside because if you look through the windows you can see it, and if it's hot pink it really stands out. So make sure to paint the inside enough to where the pink isn't showing. And then I tried using a fan brush to distress, but I just didn't. You might say I wasn't a fan. I should definitely cut this out, but I'm not going to. So I'm just going to be dry brushing this moss color of chalk paint all over the roof just to give it a nice distressed aged look. And then here is what it looked like after I had distressed it. Next, to give it some depth, using that same kind of scratchy brush that I'm using, I'm dipping that into black paint. So again, I'm only using chalk paint for this project. I don't know how acrylic paint would use or how it would work on this. For distressing, I definitely think it would work, but for the base coat, I do think it needs to be chalk paint just because it's so much thicker. But I'm just doing the same dry brushing method that I did with the moss green color, but this time using black to give it some depth. So next, going back to the actual house portion, I'm going to be using black chalk paint to distress this as well. I tried to kind of like focus in certain areas, but the black was so contrasting with the white that I just didn't love how it looked. So I ended up getting a little bit heavier handed with my paint, and using the black, I'm just going to really start to fill in all of the giant white gaps. What I'm doing right now is painting that little detail piece above the door black because I liked how that looked better than purple or brown. And so I'm just going to go in and really distress the heck out of this house using black and a little bit more brown. So this is where I got to at the point of distress. Next, I'm going to be painting the door because somehow I forgot to when I painted all of the windows. So the door itself, I am going to paint brown just like everything else. And then after those pieces had dried, I went ahead and popped them back into the house wherever they went. And this is what the house looks like at this point in time. I still just didn't love how much the white was popping out, so using the brown chalk paint, I went back in and did another layer over the top of what I had done because, I don't know, the white just looked odd. So I did try to go in with white and kind of blend it and try different things, but what I found to be the best was just to attempt to make the house look brown and like the paint had faded, as opposed to making it look like the house was at one point white. So for the door, I decided to add a little bit of depth to it because these little pieces that they give you that are windows and doors, they have a lot of detail on them, and if you just paint them one flat color, you're going to lose a lot of the detailing. So I went in with the dry brush and just added a little bit of black paint just to add some dimension to the door itself. And then went ahead and popped it back in place. I honestly didn't even wait for it to totally dry. So next I decided to glue it onto this wood slat. Now I'm going to tell you guys I do end up ripping it off of this, so if you're going to want to insert yours into a pumpkin the way I have it in the thumbnail, you can totally skip this step. Initially I thought I was going to add this into a tiered tray, but that changed. These are the two little characters that came with this dollhouse, and I want to make them look like Winifred and Mary, so I am using hot glue to create their hair, and then after the glue dries a little bit, I'm able to kind of push it with my finger and mold it. This is real dedication, you guys. You could completely make this house without making them, but I decided to. So you can see me here. I did get out a different hot glue gun that had like a really finite spout, I guess, on it, and that did help. But I think as long as you have a glue gun that you can kind of control the temperature of, keep it on the lower setting, and this will be relatively doable. For Winifred, I just had to add like almost like two little space buns, and then Mary's was really easy because hot glue naturally kind of pulls when you touch it. So for her, I just made that little spiky ponytail and then just kind of pulled the hot glue. This is what the little Winifred one looks like close up. And then, like I said, if you're going to plan on putting the little house into a pumpkin, you don't need this wood slat, but they do sell these wood slats at Dollar Tree. Walmart also has them in a bigger pack. And then using my hot glue gun, I'm just going to glue this down on here. I was able to rip it off of this later on. You're going to see that. But originally I thought, again, I was going to put this in a tiered tray, and I thought that it needed a bigger base. I then went on to paint the base of this green so that when I glued the moss down on top of it, any holes in the moss wouldn't be so obvious. And this is what it looked like attached and all painted. Now, because I'm not completely crazy, I will not be adding details onto these teeny tiny little Polly Pocket sized dolls. I'm just going to paint their outfits a solid color. So Winifred's obviously is green, and then I will also paint her face and her hair. I would definitely wait between paint colors to paint the next layer, just so that you don't risk like mixing your paintbrush and kind of ruining this teeny tiny little person canvas. For Mary, I'm going to paint her outfit red, and then after it dries, I'll go in and paint her hair and her face. Like I said earlier, the little dollhouse only comes with 2 characters, so if you're going to want a third one for Sarah, then you're going to have to get a second dollhouse, but it is only $1.25, and you can definitely come up with another craft for the house, which is what I plan on doing. For Sarah, her hair is already fine the way it is because they gave the doll like long hair. So I'm going to paint her outfit purple, and then I'll go back in and paint her hair and her face as well. Here you can see me painting Winifred's hair orange, and then you are going to see, because the little doll naturally has like long straight hair, I'm going to be using the edges of the hair to make the collar on Winifred's dress. You'll kind of be able to see it after I show you up close. Once I've painted all of their hair and their dresses, then I'm going to very carefully go in and try to paint their faces. I'm not super concerned with this being like the most perfect paint job ever, just because they're so tiny. Now, this next step is definitely one that you can skip, but I still like to leave it in just so that you guys don't see it and wonder what you missed. So I tried to use puffy paint to create vines going up the side of the house, but in the end I decided that gluing moss looked so much better. So if you want to do the step, you totally can, but it gets covered by the moss later on anyway. This next thing is completely unnecessary, but I had these on hand. They're little like toothpick picks for cupcakes, I think. And they have little wooden pumpkins on the end of them, and I just figured I could break off the toothpick portion of it, and then using some brown paint, I just tried to like distress them a little bit to give them some dimension. And I'm going to be gluing these down in front of the house, just as like a fun little detail. But again, I wouldn't stress about going to Dollar Tree and searching for these because they're not like the most dramatic change to the craft. Next is going to be gluing on the moss. I do get my moss from Dollar Tree, but if you can't find it, obviously any craft store will sell this. And it's usually pretty affordable because it's, you know, like dried greenery. But I'm just going to be using hot glue on the base of this, and also going to be using it to create those vines going up the house. Again, I'm leaving this in just in case you would prefer the house on the base and not inside of the pumpkin. But if you intend to put this inside of a pumpkin, don't do this step just yet, because you're actually going to glue the moss directly down into the pumpkin once you've cut it out. After kind of like shaking off the excess of the moss and pulling any loose strands, I'm then going to continue with my hot glue gun up the house where I puffy painted those vines, and instead going to add moss on top of them. I also added little bits of moss around the windows just to give it an even more kind of like distressed and withered look. And here is a close-up of what the house looks like at this point. So kind of the name of the game with this craft for me is like changing my ideas around as I'm going. So again, I distressed those two little pumpkins, and I'm just going to be gluing those to the base. But once more, if you don't plan on using the base, then just hold on to those and we'll glue them into the pumpkin in just a little bit, into the large display pumpkin. And then also, with your little miniature Sanderson sisters, I originally glued these down into the largest window opening in the house because I liked the idea of being able to kind of see them when you peek into the house. However, at the very end of this project, Kala pointed out to me that they should obviously be in the doorway because of how many times they're in the doorway in the movie, both of them, the original and the sequel, and that's like iconic. So I did end up ripping them out, repainting it where the glue ripped off the paint, and I glued them down into the doorway instead. So what I'm doing now, I'm still going to include just because I like showing you guys your options, but I did end up putting mine in the doorway. So now moving on to putting it inside of a pumpkin, make sure you buy a carvable pumpkin. I made the stupid mistake of buying another pumpkin that I thought was carvable, and it was just foam. So it was completely solid on the inside, and you won't be able to use that kind of pumpkin for this project. Just using an X-Acto knife, I am going in and kind of chiseling out an opening that I think will be big enough, and I'm just kind of playing it by eye. But it worked really well. This particular pumpkin is from Michael's, and it just popped right out when I was ready. And then I did discover that I needed to even out the top just a little tiny bit. I didn't intend for my lines to be perfectly straight. I did purposefully add in a little bit of curvature so that I didn't have to worry about it looking perfect on the opening. If you guys have ever used carvable pumpkins, you know how easy these things are. I love them. I'm a huge fan. And then you get to keep it forever. You don't have to throw it away at the end of the season. So make sure that your house is small enough to fit inside. You can see here I'm having to rip it off of the base because I thought maybe it could fit inside on the base, but it does not. So I went ahead and ripped it off, and then the house itself does fit as long as I took it off of the base, but it doesn't touch the bottom of the pumpkin so great. So as a filler on the bottom, I pulled out those tumbling tower blocks from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to be using that glued on the bottom of the house to fill that gap. The easiest way to do this is just to figure out where the best placement for it is in your pumpkin. For me, it was dead center on the house. So using my hot glue gun, I'm just going to hot glue one of those little Jenga pieces onto the house. Again, you can pick those up at Dollar Tree in the toy section when you pick up the dollhouse if you need it. And then I'm going to hot glue this into my pumpkin. I'm sorry this is so hard to see, but this was such an odd thing to film. Because no matter what I did, I seemed to be in the way. So, but I'm just gluing that down into the center of my pumpkin like this. And then don't worry about the tower block because the moss is going to completely cover that. You will never know that it was there. I will be adding lights to my pumpkin. So originally I played with this green flashing small battery pack light that I had, but in the end I decided to do a pink light because in the movie when they say, oh, look, they're conjuring, it's like a pink purpley smoke is coming out of the chimney, so that's the light I decided to go with. In order to make it easier on myself to turn this light on and off, I am going to be chiseling out a hole in the back of my pumpkin. I did think originally I could cut this to where the battery pack could just sit snugly inside of it, but when I did that, I did have trouble losing the battery pack into the pumpkin. And once the house goes in, it is pretty hard to reach behind the house to grab it, so I do end up cutting the hole larger than I need it to be, just so that the battery pack can sit outside of the pumpkin and I'm not losing it every time I turn it on or off. So here you can see me fishing the lights through, and that hole is much larger than it needs to be, and I'm just going to hang it outside of it. So next we're going to be adding the moss into the pumpkin, and I'm just doing a lot of hot glue and then taking the moss and just kind of gently tapping it down with my fingers. My goal is to make it look like the house is sitting on top of the grass, so I am making sure to shove it under the house as well in the little gap that was created. I also want to shout out these little desk vacuums. I don't know if you guys have had these advertised to you, but I picked this one up on Amazon, and with moss especially, it is a godsend. Like, you just click the little button and it vacuums up all the little tiny pieces. I do have to sometimes pull out the really large chunks that get stuck, but other than that, I don't know what I would do without it. And then this is what it looked like so far. Now, I didn't get this on camera, but I did decide to take the moss all the way to the edge on the bottom of the pumpkin, as well as all the way around the opening. I really liked the spookiness of how the moss looks around the edges. It was just really hard to film that without my hands being in the way. And then the last step of this is to glue down the witches in the doorway if that's where you want them. I did have to like rip my whole house out and kind of start over when I decided to change that, but again, didn't film that portion. So just glue your witches down with a little dot of hot glue in the doorway, and you are done. You have this lovely Hocus Pocus pumpkin to enjoy.
Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate you guys making it all the way through the end of this video. If you did, please leave me a candle emoji for the black flame candle, obviously. This helps me know that this was a video you enjoyed and that you were able to make it all the way through. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe and check out my other videos. I do have an entire list of Hocus Pocus inspired DIYs, and I also have other Disney villain and Disney themed Halloween DIYs if you want to check those out as well. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!